My lecturate topic is UN reforms in India. Going back little to the history of United Nations, it was set up 75 years ago with the motive of establishing international peace and security in the world. It was successful in decolonization and preventing another world war. But now the question arises that why there should be a reform in the UN. So, according to me, the 21st century is very different from the 20th century with the upcoming new challenges and ground realities. For example, we can see the United Nations failure in the COVID 19 pandemic. Also, this has highlighted the challenges pertaining to the multilateral United Nations system, and therefore reforms are necessary in United Nations to make it effective. So, what are the challenges? I find three challenges. First is the Cold War between United USA on one hand and Russia and China on another hand. Second, I find the divided West, that is, the differences between United Nations and the other European countries on the global issues. For example, the difference between UN and other powers in is very visible in the Iran nuclear deal. The third thing or challenge which I find is UN failure in COVID-19 pandemic. For example, in the United Nations Security Council, we saw that China stopped the discussion on the origin of the virus and its crisis, while the USA stepped out from World Bank. So now coming to the solution part and the areas of reform, we know that UNSC is a center of the UN. It plays a very important role. And the permanent five members use their veto power in exercising their geopolitical interest, regardless of the disastrous consequences. It is very necessary to increase the 15 15 country in UNSC for making it more transparent and democratic. So it has been an age-long overdue to include the G4 nations in the permanent five members, that is India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan. The another area which I find is the United Nations General Assembly is the only which is the is the only which can make the non-binding recommendations, and this is the biggest issue in the UN reform. Third, which I find is United Nations itself has been facing the permanent financial crisis, which is the biggest reason of its ineffectiveness. Now coming to the India's role in UN reform. So it has been noted by one of the former United Nations Secretary General that any reform in the UN would be incomplete without reforms in the UNSC. And India envisages the strengthening of the UNSC. And this is one of the biggest challenge because most of the permanent five members are avoiding this strengthening of UNSC. Now, second is to avoid the financial crisis of UN, India can propose a bicameral parliamentary assembly in the United Nations General Assembly. Third is that India should look on its territorial integrity also, especially at the time when it's facing the China's aggression on the border. So we can we can leverage our multilateralism with the Quad countries and the organizations like FATF to create a pressure on China to stop China and especially on Pakistan to stop the cross-border insurgencies. In a nutshell, I will only say that reforms and improvements are necessary for any organization of its effectiveness and facing the current and upcoming challenges in the world. And United Nations is no exception to it. Thank you.